Hello, my name is Terry. This video will cover our private residence investigation which occurred in October 2015. Site locations investigated on the property consisted of the barn where the animals are kept, the private residence, the orchard, which is consisting of apple and cherry trees, and the pasture lands surrounding the property. The owners have been experiencing particular problems. The animals on the property are being disturbed, and the trees on the property have begun to die or are no longer producing fruit in their orchards. Before it became dark, we swept the area with a K2 meter. There's an area where a dried creek bed and the woods meet where we encountered unusually strong EMF readings. The meter spiked out at its maximum reading of 10, so we don't know how much beyond this level it was encountering, but there's no man-made source in this area that should be producing spikes of this intensity. While walking parallel to the pastures in the back, one of our group members experienced something being pelted at them and struck them in the jacket. We looked over the area. There are no overhanging tree branches or anything that could account for this, such as a branch falling or some object falling off the tree. There weren't any in the area, but something struck them. Another person heard the sounds of rocks being thrown at them. This is something we've encountered in other locations like Charbonnier Bluffs. You get whacked by something?
Yeah. It almost felt like a branch hit me, but there's no branches.
You know what? Up earlier by the barn when we were walking out there, I thought I heard a rock kind of hit next to me and then trickle, and I didn't see one, but it really sounded like somebody threw a rock at me.
Like a thud?
Yeah,
Something hit me right here on my coat.
So you can't be like an acorn falling from a tree above. There aren't any.
Far away.
No, it hit this way.
Yeah.
There's no...
Shortly later, we returned to the barn where other investigators had set up the equipment to monitor everything going on inside. They'd reported hearing the sound of footsteps walking around inside the barn. Then the animals had become spooked and were bolting. I had gone down this area and I'd noticed also that the horses, which had been calm earlier, were very skittish and upset. Something had clearly spooked them, but we couldn't see what had triggered it.
I got hit in the
chest.
Something hit me. Something thrown at me. I don't know.
Really?
Yep.
When was that?
Just 5 minutes ago.
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Was
Danny
there
and I were
anybody-
in the tack room.
Was there anybody manning the cameras?
Yeah.
The horses really started acting up.
That's what I was wondering, because they're nervous down there, right?
Yeah,
We heard them
we
on the
heard
other
them, yeah.
side of the, yeah.
Yeah, right as they started acting up, we heard footsteps.
And that was about 3 minutes after she got hit, or 4, something like that.
One observation that I'd made was that the feeling of being watched while down in this area with the horses. The other thing is that I was feeling that I was being watched, but not from the ground level. It was like being watched from overhead, from the rafters, like something was looking down on us, watching us from above. When I reported this observation to several of the other members, they also noted the same feeling, that they were being watched from overhead. This is unusual in that an observation, when you bring it to other people's attention, they also note it. But if you hadn't documented it and brought it to their attention, it would have gone unnoticed. You probably didn't notice this in the previous clip, but the sound of someone exhaling was recorded on the video. This is none of our group members. We attempted an EVP session on the property and had no success. I also attempted my box test, where I place an object that I think whatever is on the property will respond to. I had placed a Civil War Confederate battle flag inside a box. It also did not respond to this. Despite these failures with 2 of our tests, several things were beginning to emerge, and I was putting the pieces together. The pattern was very distinct in that objects were being thrown, the sound of rocks being banged together. It was following the pattern of an elemental, which is similar to what we'd encountered on the bluffs overlooking Charbonnier. People will interpret what an elemental spirit is differently. My personal view is it's something that has never lived. It's a intelligent entity that has never actually ever been a person or an animal, but has always survived in spirit form and is tied to a certain area. We've communicated with these things before with their manipulating equipment, the banging of rocks, objects thrown. They can communicate with individuals, and we've had psychics communicate with them, and some of them can be hostile toward people. We proceeded out into the orchard field, into the area where the woods is. This is the area where I believe this elemental is residing, and I asked on camera if it was an elemental spirit. I was with one other person, a sensitive, and she said that whatever it was had become angry that we had identified what it was. I have no idea why it would become angry for simply being identified as an elemental spirit. It may have its reasons. Perhaps it was trying to fool people into thinking it was something else, or it had another motive. But it's difficult to figure out what the motives of something like this is. Are you an elemental spirit?
Okay, whatever that is, it did not like you addressing it as such. Okay, it definitely did not like that you identified what it was. Is.
Despite whatever it was becoming upset with having been identified, it seemed to want to communicate with us, and it did so through the banging of rocks. In the next series of clips, which I'll repeat 3 times, and some with higher volume so that you can hear it more easily, you'll hear from the woods the sounds of rocks being banged together. This is its best way, I believe, of attempting to communicate with us. We were attempting to get it to answer questions, but it is either unable or unwilling to communicate through speech.
I know you're not shy. Come forward. Rocks pounding again.
Banging.
Were you called here?
The next clip was recorded in the same area of the woods. We were standing still, there were only 2 of us there. Yet something was clearly walking around, and it wasn't us. I attempted an EVP session with this entity. Only one question seemed to trigger a response. I asked if it knew how the owner could return the property to good health, and it seemed to attempt to respond to this through a sound which I'm not certain is an EVP voice or not. Who owns this property wants this place to be returned to good health. Do you know how to do that? Still with just 2 of us present, we decided to move deeper into the woods. We stopped and we decided that we'd remain motionless and try another EVP session. If you listen carefully, whatever it is has clearly moved much closer to us than had been previously noted from the edge of the woods.
Did you hear that?
The next scene is very interesting. Both of us are completely motionless, standing in the same spot in the woods. Yet whatever it is can be heard walking literally just feet in front of us. I can't account for why we can't see anything, yet whatever it is just feet from us.
How about you make a noise once? If you're male.
Did you hear that?
Yes, I did. Once. Once. Once.
The last sound recorded from this location, I'm uncertain as to whether it's an EVP or a series of sounds attempting a voice. We set up cameras throughout the night to monitor the interior of the private residence. What's very interesting is there's 2 locations that are known hotspots, an upstairs hallway and a room downstairs in the basement where a tragedy occurred. The interesting thing is that the women who were in these areas were all profoundly affected and picked up on activity. The men all sensed nothing. We picked up on no hint of any sort of activity. It was as if nothing was there. One exception to this occurred many years ago when the owner's son was a child, perhaps 9 or 10 years old. They witnessed a black shadow figure upstairs in the hallway. This is interesting in that perhaps children can pick up on it. We documented 3 minor events inside the house on my equipment. The first was that a pulse of white light is seen on one of the videos to the left of all the laser grid patterns. It appears for just a split second and disappears. I don't have any account for this because there's no light source that should be illuminating beyond the range of the lasers. The second clip was also recorded in the basement. The millimeters being triggered, it documented a 4 milligauss spike in EMF readings. The third clip was recorded upstairs in the hallway. The millimeter documented a change in temperature, a cold spot. You'll notice the blue flashing light indicating the dropping of temperature. But if you look carefully, it doesn't trigger the alarm on the circuit on the millimeter, meaning that it wasn't a significant cold spot. This could just be the natural cooling throughout the night being detected by the meter. During this investigation, I only captured 2 photos worth looking at. That's pretty typical. I have very little luck taking digital still photos. Only occasionally will I capture a photo that is really nice. This one is pretty typical in that the first one contains an orb that I believe to be genuine, but it's not a very impressive thing to look at, but it's just something worth noting on the property. Dust orbs and insects were photographed, and I dismissed all those photos. This one I separated in that I believe it to be genuine. The second photo is probably nothing at all, but I included it just for documenting purposes. If you look carefully among the trees, it looks like there's a figure standing among them, a large face. I doubt that this is real. I think it's more of an optical trick of shadows and light from the camera's own flash producing an effect. But it's just worth noting, and I document it for the video.